Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would love to continue on with the wonderful viewer questions that you so very kindly submitted to this channel a few months back. And once again, please allow me to express my deep gratitude to you for sending in these questions and for expressing an interest in what it is I might have to say on a given topic. Thank you so much for this. This really means a lot. Thank you. And that brings us to the next of these great questions, which is from Tony Farinella. So hello, Tony. I hope this video finds you well. And you say, what is one film you most identify with and relate to your own life, and why? Tony Farinella, thank you so much for this lovely question. I think it's, on the one hand, I admit to having a great deal of difficulty in answering this question. I think on the one hand because it's a little bit it's difficult. Also, there is a sense of, I think, maybe when I watch a film, I project a certain sense of, say, kind of fantasy of what it is that I'd like to think of myself, or who it is I'd like to think I am, and maybe what that fantasy is not necessarily who I am in real life. And so it might be something that, or in that circumstance, I think it's a little bit difficult for me to give an example of maybe a film that I feel maybe is somehow something that is something I can relate to in terms of my own life. But in thinking more about it, what I can say is something that is very personal to me, and I'll try to explain why. There is a film, or there's a filmmaker who's from Japan, and he was the great filmmaker and artist, whose name is Isao Takahata. And Takahata was, his works were in the realm of animation, and in the context of the very famous animation studio in Japan called Studio Ghibli. And there are, of course, the works of Miyazaki that are very famous. There are also works of Takahata that are very famous. One such work by Takahata, which is an animation work, is called in Japanese Omoide Poroporo, and it's often given the title in English, Only Yesterday. Now, I have spoken, I think, a little bit on this channel about Only Yesterday. I am a big fan of Only Yesterday. I think it's one of the greats of Studio Ghibli's work. It's one of my favorites of Studio Ghibli, and it's really up there in terms of how much it means to me, for a lot of reasons. Now, one of those reasons is a very personal one, and so therefore please allow me to use this as an example of how I might be able to answer your great question, Tony. What is one film I can identify with, and why? Now, I personally do not identify with the story of Taeko, who is the main character of the film Omoide Poroporo, or Only Yesterday. So I don't admit to understanding specifically her story. There are some aspects, for instance, about her life as a 20-something adult who is living and working in the big city. There are some aspects of her office life and that environment that I can recognize and identify based on my own, say, experience. Even now, living and working in Japan, in Tokyo. So those things I can get. But there are other aspects of her story, in particular her story as a young child growing up, and also her story going into the northern part of Japan. It's known as Yamagata, Japan. So those are aspects that, on the one hand, maybe I can't claim to have any direct relevance or direct attachment to directly. However, I think on another level, I can say that I find these aspects to be things that I can very much and very strongly relate to. Now, let me try to explain why. So, the modern day story of Only Yesterday, Omoide Poroporo, has the character of Taeko visiting this northern part of Japan, Yamagata. Now, Yamagata is very close to, or it's in the Tohoku region of Japan. And Yamagata is very close to Miyagi. And Miyagi is where I used to live for not very long, maybe a few years. But they were very happy years for me. And they were years of my own young adulthood. And this is where I met the person that I was very fortunate to have met, because she became my wife. And so we have, and my wife's family is in the Miyagi area, or from the Miyagi area. And it's not the same place that was depicted in Only Yesterday, but it's very close. And so to see the scenes in Omoide Poroporo, or Only Yesterday, that take place in this northern part of Japan, this sort of modern day story here, but that harken back to a type of life that is very much dependent on farming, and on the beauty of the rural aspects of living in Japan. These are aspects that are still very much part of my wife's family. It's not exactly the same, but there are aspects that are quite similar. And so when I see these moments, I am reminded not just of this northern part of Japan, the Tohoku area, and the dialect, which is very similar. It's not quite the same, but it's very similar. And I'm reminded of aspects of my wife's family and her relatives, and also my own time living in the northern part of Japan some years back. And so I find these moments, and they speak about certain areas that I haven't visited, but I know very well because they're famous, because they're strong landmarks in this northern part of Japan. For instance, Mount Zao. People know Zao very much, and so when that's mentioned, oh yes, we know this. So that type of energy suddenly alights, and so that's one way I think. And also this area of Japan holds. It's very special to me. I love this area of Japan, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Tokyo and I love living here, but the northern part of Japan, as I say, was a time in my life that I was very happy. I was so happy living there for a number of reasons. I met certain people that were very important, that are very important in my life, and also it was a very happy time. It was a very, very happy time indeed. So, and this was a happy time in my life that came, I admit, after a period in my life that wasn't so happy. And so therefore, in that context, my life living in northern Japan was very important to me, and it still is, and I hold those memories very dearly. And I dare say too that when I watch Only Yesterday, again, it's not a direct experience I get, but it's those connections that I can still feel very much close to my own heart when I see those components of that particular story. So that is one way that film Only Yesterday is very important to me, and how I can relate to it. Another way that this film is very important to me, and I can relate very directly to it, in a certain point of view anyway, is in the flashback structure. And the flashback structure story involves the character of Taeko thinking back on her life as a young girl growing up. And this is so lovely to me, because when many years ago I watched this film, and then my mother too, she saw this film as well, and she fell in love with it immediately. The reason why she fell in love with me, I can still remember it. When I was there when she was watching it for the first time. I was on VHS tape or something. And I was in the same room. And I was loving the film as I was watching. But what I loved even more was seeing my mom's reaction as she was watching this film for the first time. And she was saying, as the film was, oh, I remember, that's exactly what I felt. That's how I was when I was a little girl. I remember that song. I remember, yes, it was, yes, Michelle, the Beatles. Yes, I remember that. And all this stuff, all these memories came flooding back to her. And she was just elated and excited, and she was sharing with me all these things. And my father was there too, and she was talking with him and just saying, oh, this, I remember when I watched this, do you remember this? Do you remember this time when we were kids? Do you remember that song? Do you remember this TV show? And that type of stuff was happening before my very eyes. And it was incredible because I had never seen my mother that excited about a particular film that she was watching. I mean, of course, she'd been into a lot of films, but never in that type of personal way, at least as far as I had seen. And so that was a very emotionally overwhelming moment for me. And it was something where it was like something that I didn't even know about. There's sometimes relationships can be like that, with people that like maybe one's parents or something. You know your parents, but then there are aspects of their lives when they're kids growing up that you don't know about, or I didn't know about. And so this was one of those moments where I knew a little bit, or I got a sense of her own childhood, which was amazing. And I was feeling that in real time as I was in the same room watching the film and also watching her watching the film. And so therefore, even now, when I watch the film only yesterday, many years after the fact, that time when I was in the living room or wherever watching it with my parents or watching it with my mom, and now, right, many years later, they have passed on, and they are no longer with us, and they are no longer here. But maybe it is in that way, in particular, or especially because she's no longer with us. Maybe it is in that way that watching a film like Omoide Poroporo or Only Yesterday, for me now, becomes even more important. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's almost like seeing that moment with my mom all those years ago, her watching the film and having those memories still alive. My own mind is getting older. I'm getting older. My memories are getting, or my ability to recall is getting it's frail, and it's failing me slowly but surely on a daily basis. And there are things I'm beginning to forget. But one of the things that I hope that I will never forget is that feeling, or those memories of my mom watching this film. And one of the ways that I hope to never be able to forget that is to continually watch this film, Omoide Poroporo, and to remind myself of what it was that I was experiencing vicariously through my own mother, and also how this film reminds me of those happy times in my life associated with other parts of Japan. So in those, I think, two basic ways, I could say that a film like Only Yesterday, Omoide Poro, is something that I can relate to. I don't know if that answers the question directly, and if not, I really, really apologize, Tony. I don't mean to maybe avoid the question in any way, but I think that's how I would answer it at this point in time. Really, I'm trying to be as sincere as possible here, but if it's not a satisfactory answer, I really apologize. But it's a great question as well, a fantastic question. So I want to thank you very much, Tony, for that. And for anyone who might be interested in answering the question that our dear friend Tony so very kindly submitted, I'd love to hear your responses in the comment section below. Once again, what is one film you most identify with and relate to your own life, and why? Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your very precious time. I very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.